It was a Saturday morning. The day was bright, and the group chat with my buddies was already buzzing with talk of camping, fishing, and golf. Everyone was out enjoying their day off. But there I was, dressed in a suit, clocking in at the underground parking garage of my apartment building. Why? Because Mr. Harrison, the director of our department, the man above me, had asked me to bring his car back from his apartment parking lot. "Mike, take my car home today, will you? You know the address. The keys in the glove compartment on the passenger side." He'd tossed the words at me late Friday night after a long day before clocking out early. His face was still a vivid, unpleasant memory. I muttered to myself, "Am I a slave?" But what could I do? I just forced a smile and said, "Yes, sir, I understand. That's how you survive long-term in this corporate game. This much I could tolerate." Then the phone rang that morning. "My wife needs the car today. Don't leave it with the doorman. Hand it to her directly. Call me when you're at the car." I had to laugh. Handing over a car key didn't require any special effort, and I wasn't a delivery driver. The only thing that came to mind was I'm his errand boy. By the time I drove the car to the director's apartment building, sweat was trickling down my back. It was a luxury car, which meant it was big and heavy, and driving it so mindlessly had given me a headache. I called. "Mrs. Harrison, I've brought the car." A cold voice said one word, "Wait." "Oh, yes, ma'am." The words almost slipped out, but I swallowed them down. While waiting, I glanced around. This was a wealthy neighborhood. Quiet gardens sat among the upscale condos, and tree shadows stretched long on the pavement. That's when it happened. A woman walked no-glided toward me from a distance. The hem of her skirt brushed the middle of her thighs. She walked with a confident gait, even in slippers. The sunlight softly hugged her shoulders and neck, showing off her smooth, exposed arms. I couldn't breathe. She approached and asked, "Did my husband send you?" "Yes," I answered, though I suspect my voice trembled. He didn't mention needing any help driving. I paused for a beat. She then opened the door and sat in the back seat. "Get in. We have a drive ahead of us." The back seat. Not the passenger seat, but the back seat. She spoke casually, like it was a command. "Where should I take you?" "To the Orion Clinic on Sycamore Street. Use the GPS. It will take a while." Her voice was soft, yet her gaze in the rearview mirror seemed to pierce right through me. As I started driving, she immediately closed her eyes. Arms crossed, legs crossed. My eyes kept drifting to the back seat. Her long-toned, sexy legs were fully exposed beneath the skirt. Sweat began to pour, not from the sun, but because the desire inside me was pulling at my throat. This woman is the wife of that ugly, pot-bellied director. I couldn't believe it. Such a smooth, provocative woman. The car slowly left the neighborhood. Something was off. The road noise seemed louder today, and the engine sounded more pronounced than usual. Perhaps it was just the sound of my own heart. For the first time that day, I thought, I wish I could have her. That was the beginning of everything. The drive took over an hour. She kept her eyes closed the entire time, and I couldn't bring myself to look away from the hem of her skirt, which revealed her legs. The car was silent. The scenery outside changed, but my mind was stuck, circling a single thought. Why is she so alluring? Am I losing my mind? She's my boss's wife. The moment she subtly shifted in the back, the skirt slid a few more centimeters up her thigh. A wave of cold sweat ran down my back. Did she notice my quick, stolen glance in the mirror? Upon arrival, she said without moving, "I'm just going to pick up some medicine. Wait for me." She stepped out without looking at me. Left alone in the driver's seat, my hands felt like they had been rubbed with salt, a stinging, strange mix of shame and excitement. She returned with a paper bag of medicine and said, "Now take me to the Regal Hotel. I need to meet a friend." The instant I turned the car around, something broke inside me. This wasn't work. this wasn't an errand. I felt like I was becoming her personal chauffeur for the day. At the hotel, she said, "I'll be about 30 minutes. Don't go anywhere. Wait for me." She left just like that. I gripped the steering wheel, unable to move. I watched her back disappear into the hotel, and I hung my head, whispering, "Why am I doing this? What is this?" Time dragged on. When she finally returned, she had an extra designer bag on her shoulder. She smiled lightly and said, "Thank you, Mike. You made things easy for me today. By the way, how old are you?" I hesitated briefly, then answered, "I'm 45. She stopped. "We're the same age. I thought you were older than me." That one sentence created a strange crack in my composure. The fact that this woman, with whom I'd had no personal conversation, had suddenly smiled and mentioned they were the same age lingered in my mind for an unusually long time. On the drive back, she quietly closed her eyes again. I tried hard not to look at her in the mirror, but I failed, stealing glances at the skirt that had once again settled on her thigh. As I parked the car outside her home, she opened the door and said, "Good work. I might need your help again sometime." My heart jumped. Her tone carried a clear implication, a current that definitely pulled me in. That night alone in my apartment, her legs and the words "same age" kept circling in my head. Two people the same age passing through the same era. But one was the director's wife and the other his employee. An alluring wind seemed to be seeping through that gap. It had already begun very slowly. A few days passed. She didn't contact me. Perhaps that's why I thought of her even more. Her legs from the driver's seat, the curve of her body as she leaned back with her eyes closed, and that single phrase, "We're the same age." A corner of my heart felt strangely ticklish. That Friday, the director, Mr. Harrison, suddenly announced he'd be gone. "My business trip is extended about 10 days. Leave the car here, but if my wife needs help, please assist her." It was her again. I hated myself for being glad at the thought of helping her. On Saturday afternoon, the call came. "Mike Smith," her familiar voice. "Could you take me to Sycamore Street this evening to meet a friend?" Another chauffeur duty, I thought, but I simply said yes and drove over. Upon arrival, she was waiting. Instead of the passenger seat, she got in the back again. She wore a short black dress, long-sleeved, but the silhouette exposed her figure. As soon as she sat, she crossed her legs and the skirt slid up her thigh again. The car flowed along silently. The radio was off. We said nothing yet. The air between us seemed to tremble strangely. She broke the silence midway. "It might take a while today. If you get lonely or bored, you can go to a nearby coffee shop." With that, she took the elevator up. I had no desire to go to a cafe. The thought of fidgeting and not being able to enjoy the coffee was unappealing. So I just loitered around the alley behind the hotel, glancing toward her location, and then I followed her inside. I didn't follow immediately. I waited in the lobby for about 15 minutes. Then I deliberately took the elevator up. My heart was pounding inside. In the third-floor hallway through a slightly ajar door, I saw Mrs. Harrison's silhouette. She was embraced by a man. A strange man's hand was wrapped around her waist, and her eyes were closed. What is she doing? The thought stuck in my throat, but my body wouldn't move. She saw me. Startled, she quickly regained her composure. Slowly, she closed the door. I took the elevator down, biting my lip, repeating one image in my mind. If only I were in that man's place. After she disappeared, I leaned against the wall behind the hotel. My throat was dry and my chest felt tight. I returned to the car after a few minutes, unsure of how long I'd been standing there. I couldn't start the engine. I just waited for her to reappear. Exactly 30 minutes later, she walked out of the main entrance. I could feel her presence from a distance. Her face was expressionless, her eyes cold and closed off. Without a word, she opened the passenger door and got in. She, who always sat in the back, was silently sitting next to me this time. She sat with her arms crossed, looking out the window. Her lips were pressed tightly together. I couldn't even hear her breathing. I, too, remained silent. The car was quiet. The silence was heavy, stifling, and even the sound of the engine felt uncomfortably loud. We drove all the way back to her apartment without saying a word to each other. When the car stopped, she opened the door and got out without turning her head. I didn't move until she disappeared inside. That night, a message arrived from Mrs. Harrison. "Mike, don't mention what you saw today. I'll give you what you want." That single sentence, a mixture of threat and temptation, opened a door inside me. I lost count of how many times I turned my phone screen on and off after receiving her text. "Don't mention what happened today. I'll give you what you want." A breathtaking thrill went through me. I should have deleted it. I should have forgotten it. But my heart moved in the opposite direction. The next day I sent a message. "What you mentioned you'd give me. I'd like an invitation today." I knew how blatant my words were. She didn't reply for a long time. Then, late that afternoon, 3 words arrived. "Come over." My heart leaped and my hands grew sweaty. I looked in the mirror, changed my shirt, took a deep breath, and headed to her apartment. I didn't ring the bell. The door was unlocked. The apartment was quiet. The lights were dim and thin curtains were swaying at the window. "Come in." She was leaning against the sofa. Her silhouette was visible beneath a thin knit top, and she was wearing a slip that rode high above her knees. She didn't avoid my gaze, and I no longer turned away. I walked closer and met her lips. She wasn't surprised. A faint smile touched the corner of her mouth. My fingertips traced the line of her shoulder, and the knit top slipped to the floor. Our breaths grew hot, and the air quickly warmed up. She made no sound, and I was drawn in deeper. In silence, we delved into each other and crumbled. It wasn't just once. We lost the timing to stop. In the darkness, we slowly but clearly crossed the line. Our breathing slowly calmed. Sitting on the sofa, she spoke calmly. "I think I knew this would happen, but I don't regret it." I didn't answer. Instead, I quietly placed my hand on the back of hers. She didn't pull her hand away, and the room grew quiet again. Outside, a light rain was falling. The next few days were quiet. She didn't call, and I deliberately didn't ask first. But my mind was filled with the scenes from that night, her lips, her low breaths, the silent permission. It wasn't just an impulse. I felt as if a part of my emotions, not my body, had been severed and attached to her. That Friday, a call came from an unfamiliar number. It was her. "Mike, you know my husband is still on his trip. Something came up and I need to use the car with you." That was all, but it was enough. The next afternoon, I was at her apartment again. This time I didn't ring the bell, and the door was still unlocked. She was sitting on the inner sofa and didn't get up when she saw me. The tips of her feet and slippers were barely visible beneath the sofa, and a faint smile lingered on her lips. I walked in silently and sat next to her. She slowly turned her head toward me and cautiously placed her hand on the back of mine. That single touch spoke more than any words. We leaned into each other silently again, and that night too slipped away. We were now something familiar. The invitation, the stripping of clothes, the moment we became intertwined, the hesitation was gradually disappearing. But the problem was that the more our bodies became accustomed, the more confused my mind became. Looking at her sleeping face, a thought suddenly struck me. When this moment ends, where am I supposed to go back to? That dawn, I quietly left her apartment. As I closed the door, my hand lingered on the doorknob. It felt like letting go of something. The path to her place had become too familiar. I didn't need to ring the bell. My body remembered where to park the car and how to take off my shoes. The door was still unlocked, and she was waiting inside as usual. The living room had a soft light on, and a quiet drama was playing on the TV. She was half reclined on the sofa, hugging a pillow and just staring at the screen. "I'm a bit tired today. Let's just watch TV together." She said this without looking at me. I carefully sat on the opposite sofa, and a few seconds of silence passed. Only the drama's dialogue filled the room, and she absorbed it without expression. I nudged the sofa closer and turned my body toward her. My hand brushed her arm, but she didn't move. Suddenly she rose, holding a wine glass, and said, "What do you think of me, Mike?" The question sounded like a thought directed at herself as much as at me. I didn't answer. I felt that if I did, this quiet wall would completely collapse. She walked silently to the kitchen, placed the glass in the sink, and slowly opened the bedroom door. I was left alone under the living room light, staring at the empty wine glass for a long time before leaning back against the sofa. That night we spent the night without any contact. She disappeared and I was left in that spot. The next morning she put a coffee cup on the table and said, "I'm not feeling well. Just go quietly today." I nodded, unable to think of anything to add. As I opened the front door to leave, she quietly added one more sentence. "The door will be open next time, too." I couldn't tell if it was a gentle promise or a cold form of control. I quietly bowed my head and closed the door. It felt heavy. I didn't hear from her for several days. I didn't try the bell, and I no longer felt certain the door would be open. I waited, and the act of waiting increasingly made me feel wronged. I told myself we were just two people who had briefly embraced, leaned into each other, and shared breaths, but those words were losing their power. On a Saturday afternoon, as I aimlessly scrolled through my phone, a message came from her. "I don't think today is possible. I'm tired. See you next time." The sentence was neat, devoid of regret or apology. But it began to break me. Was the next time she spoke of really for me, or for someone else who could replace me? To find the answer, I lingered in the hotel parking lot. Without a plan, without any right, I just stood there. And then I saw her again. This time it was clear. She was with someone much younger, with a smile that looked too carefree. She put her hand on his arm and walked into the hotel. They slowly disappeared from my sight. I felt suffocated. An uncontrollable rage flared up in my chest. I called her immediately. She answered after a moment. "Yes, Mike." Her voice was so calm that I couldn't hold back anymore. "I thought there was something real between us." She said nothing. After a brief silence, she quietly replied, "We just took what we needed from each other. Nothing more, nothing less." I knew she was right, but my heart refused to accept it. "Then why did you open your door to me that day? Why did you hold my hand and sleep with me without a word?" My voice trembled. She ended it with a sigh. "Mike, if you let feelings get involved, that's when it gets dangerous." I hung up the phone. I didn't turn on the lights in my apartment. I sat on the sofa where she had been embraced and took a deep breath. Only then did I realize I was jealous. It was a feeling that had never been allowed. The news of Mr. Harrison's return quietly circulated through the company messenger. He was back earlier than planned. I immediately checked my phone. No message from her. The last few days, boiling with jealousy and regret, instantly froze. She was back to being someone's wife. A few days later, a company dinner was scheduled. The announcement that Mr. Harrison and Mrs. Harrison would both be attending made me compulsively wipe my spoon 3 times. She hadn't changed. She was perfectly changed. A neat dress, hair neatly tied back, a quiet smile. I couldn't believe that smile was the same one I'd seen her share with the younger man in the hotel lobby a few days ago. Sitting next to Mr. Harrison, she smiled as usual, answered lightly, and refilled glasses. "Mike, please sit here." Her light gesture toward the seat next to her showed eyes as clear as if nothing had ever happened. It would have been easier to endure if that seat had been among strangers. I sat beside her. Even at that moment, she didn't flinch. I silently drank my wine. At one point, Mr. Harrison slapped my shoulder and said, "Mike, you seem to be at our apartment complex often these days. Is there a hidden gem of a restaurant there?" My fingertips froze at his words. The suspicion behind his casual remark swelled up loudly in my heart. She quickly interjected with a laugh. "There's a good torta place there. Mike recommended it to me and I went." It was too natural. While I trembled, afraid of giving away my emotions, she was perfectly in control of the whole situation. I was the only one uncomfortable at the dinner, the only one trying hard to act like nothing had happened. Driving home that night, I thought, were all those moments truly without feeling? Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I tried not to say her name, but that name had long ago become mine inside me. Mr. Harrison's face when I ran into him by the office copier seemed slightly more unfamiliar than before. His smile was the same, but the look in his eyes was different. "Mike, you're good with the dash cam, right? Our car has some scratches in the parking lot lately." His casually tossed comment made my heart pound hard. The suspicion hidden behind his words felt like it was growing inside me, making noise. From that day on, I checked the car key 2 or 3 times before grabbing it, and I subconsciously lowered my head when passing the alley near her house. I held my breath, pretending not to notice, and survived for a few days. But she was different. One evening, she sent a message with just 4 words, "Come over tonight." She wore a shorter skirt than before and greeted me at the entrance. She silently pulled out a bottle of wine and I silently drank it. That night we didn't speak. Only our hands moved, first our breaths intertwined, confirming each other's body heat slowly, then fiercely. But the end was different this time. When everything was over, she turned her back to me and lit a cigarette. "You can stop if you want to," a casually thrown sentence. But a dangerous chill was hidden within it. I didn't answer. I didn't know if I should really stop or if I should continue this moment. She exhaled smoke out the window and said indifferently, "I know I'm messing with your head, Mike, but is it really that difficult for you?" I couldn't laugh and I couldn't even cry. I just bit my lip while looking at her back. At that moment, I felt it precisely. I am caught by this woman. A cold wind was blowing outside, and an even colder silence followed inside. A text from her arrived the day Mr. Harrison left on his trip again. "Can you come over for a bit tonight?" There were no other words. My heart pounded, and I hesitated for a long time holding my phone. But eventually I headed toward that door again. Would it be unlocked like before? I lingered for a moment, but this time it was closed. I gently rang the bell, and she opened the door. This might be the last time. The words that left her lips were so calm that I became even more uneasy. Passing through the entrance, the familiar living room felt slightly dimmer. 2 glasses of wine were already poured on the dining table, and she slowly handed me one. We sat facing each other, drinking silently. After one sip, she put the glass down and said, "I think I've given you everything you wanted." Her tone was oddly composed, and that composure frightened me more. "So did you call me for one last time today?" She didn't answer. Instead, she finished her glass and quietly turned off the light. The darkness slowly enveloped the room, and we spoke only through our breaths again. That night somehow felt more cautious and hotter, charged with the tension of being the last. But when it ended, she immediately pulled the blanket up. I turned my back, staring at the ceiling. I heard nothing. The silence stretched out long like a line of dialogue. In the early morning, she got up first and quietly said, "You shouldn't depend on me anymore." I didn't ask, looking at her back. I knew that even if I got an answer, it wouldn't be the one I wanted. Putting on my shoes at the entrance, I asked one last time, "Should I never come back?" Without turning her head, her hand on the doorknob, she said, "I'll be locking the door now." Unable to answer, I quietly left the house. The sound of the door closing echoed a heavy final note between her and me. But something was strange. After that day, no matter how far I went, her warmth wouldn't leave my body. On nights when I wanted to believe it was over, her breathing returned to my ears. The door was closed, but I was still lingering inside. This is where the story ends for today. If anyone has quietly listened to this story until the end, would you please leave a comment just saying "well heard"? And if your heart was moved even a little, please hit the subscribe and like buttons. Next time I will find you with a story that is even more breathless and heart-pounding than this one.